you like to be my Vanna White tonight? Since I'm going to stand here, I'm going to need someone to hit a button on that computer screen. Yes. Thank you. Amazing. Once again, we are in cahoots.
Once again. I went to grad school with Steph.
All right, yes. So there are some wonderful familiar faces in the room tonight who have been big supporters of my mycological endeavors over the many years, and by just falling into it, I am now into this crazy world of truffles. It's not something I sought after, it's something that sought after me, and almost 15 years later, I'm still grinding away at it. So tonight, if you want to switch to the next slide, we're going to go over some parts in depth and some parts very briefly. And tonight we're going to go over the egos, the ecology, and the economics of the truffle industry. I'm going to bounce back and forth in between what's happening in Europe, what's happening in here in California, the west coast of the US, and a bits of the east coast as well, and then also what's happening coming out of the wild forest lands. All right, so I'm not going to dive too much into the history of truffles. The point of showing you these very detailed slides is that we have been eating and foraging and cultivating truffles for eons. They have been used for aphrodisiacs. They have been used to help deteriorating eyesight. There's no literature showing that actually works. But eons ago, we used to boil them in milk and then soak that in rags and put that on our eyes to help with degenerating eyesight. So we've done some crazy things with truffles. And going on into the Renaissance times when the culinary industry was born, truffles started to be sought after by popes and kings all over Europe. And so they became very sought after once cuisine was born. Next slide, please. So cultivation has been going on for several hundred years, basically because many very wealthy people were seeking truffles. Farmers were seeking ways to farm truffles without having to go out into the wild forest lands to find them. So they would basically find little oak nuts, chestnuts, hazelnuts, germinating out in the wild forest lands, and then bring them into a cultivation setting looking like an orchard, a vineyard, intertransplanting between vineyards and orchards. When a tree or a vine would die, they'd often put in another tree to grow truffles. And it worked. It worked because it was native tree, native soil, native fungus species, and then also native rodents activating, and then also native soil microbes going on there. So it was a natural system in Europe, and it's very, very successful, and we're trying to recreate that here. So World War II and World War I, prior to those big wars, there were thousands and thousands of acres and hundreds of tons of truffles being pulled out of the ground and consumed every year in Europe. Post the World Wars, Australia and New Zealand jumped on board, and just like the wine industry, the United States is behind the curveball on the truffle industry as well. We are still pioneers here in the United States. So here we are, talking about truffles as a pioneer. So everyone here, I'm guessing, is familiar with mycorrhizae. Is anyone here not familiar with mycorrhizae? There's some newbies in the room. Fabulous. So you're my audience. I'm going to talk to you for a moment, not to bore everyone else, but mycorrhizae is fungus root. So in the soil, a plant the roots can only obtain nutrients and water from a certain percentage of that soil substrate because it can't reach it all. The mycorrhizae, the fungi, will be able to obtain another 80% of that soil matter by the vast mycelium network in the soil. Every time you walk outside and you walk on dirt, you're walking on mycelium, whether you know it or not. So there are 7 different types of mycorrhizae. We're only really working with one type tonight, which is the truffles. And they are ectomycorrhizal, which means they are on the outside of the root. There are 6 other ways that fungi get into the roots of plants. So as you see here on these roots, oh, I have a fancy pointer. They grow like these little socks. They knit like little socks on the outside of the root. It's like a sheath on the outside of the root. So here we have a tree, and you can see the fruiting bodies. And we're getting better at knowing how to make this happen and why. Next slide. So here is an endomycorrhizae where the mycelium gets into the cells. Tonight we're just talking about the ectomycorrhizae, the truffles, the Boletaceae, and the chanterelles, the other edible mushrooms we like. They're ectomycorrhizae, and they make this cool sock on the outside of the root. So we know that the mycelium itself will stimulate the root to make multiple dichotomous or double branching patterns on the root so that there's more surface area for the root and the mycelium to attach. But now we are also finding out that there are other microbes involved in this and aromas that stimulate the roots to do this. Here is a scanning electron micrograph of a pine root, and you see all of these hairs. These are the mycelium sheathing itself or growing a sock around the root. So in terms of truffles, we know that if we were to put a single tree in the ground over a very short period of time, that mycelium that is growing on that root is going to overachieve the other roots, and it's all going to be its same vegetative state, which is the same sexual type. And then as sooner, like 6 months, less than a year, you're gonna all have one single mating type on the roots. So what we're seeing now in truffle cultivation is we have to re-inoculate, we have to add more spores, we have to add males to the females in the orchard setting, which naturally occurs in nature because you have fruiting bodies naturally occurring in nature, and you also have the rodents bringing them in, eating them, digging them up, moving them around, pooping them around, and the rodents actually are and also the bugs and slugs are helping to move those mating types around and help with this regenerative state of being able to create happy individuals that will make the fruiting bodies. Truffles are considered heterophalic. Don't want to bore you with too much of big words, but that means that they absolutely need different sexual mating types of spores and mycelium spores to grow the mycelium of different sexual mating types in order to achieve their fruiting bodies. Some fungi don't need that. They can just have one mating type and then achieve all that they dreamed of. Truffles, they need the different mating types. And in order to do that, we do massive amounts of labor in the orchards that we have in order to achieve that. So the ecological roles of truffles, we're going to get into that now. Truffles, they lack the ability to forcibly discharge their spores like we see our macrofungi, the guild fungi and the port fungi above ground. So they give off these fabulous aromas in order to attract different snails, slugs, humans, dogs, pigs. There are 2 main types of aromas in the truffles. We have the androstenals. These are your musky, cheesy, wet sock aromas. And then you also have the thiols, which is a sulfur group on the carbon molecule of these aromas. Don't want to get too much into molecular chemistry here, but the garlic and the rotten egg aromas are actually hydrophobic, and they need to find their way out of the soil for us to smell, or the dogs or the rodents. And this is what we need, or we like to have for a culinary aspect. So this hydrophobic thiol on this aroma is what attaches to fats and eggs and pastas and dishes that we now call a culinary edible fungi. So there's a lot going on in the soil that we are just at the very beginning of peeling the onion away of understanding of what's going on in soil ecology. And so what we see here is we have the thiols here that the dogs and the pigs can pick up in the soil, but we also have yeasts, bacteria, and other filamentous fungi in the soil that also are giving off aromas and that are going towards the different aromas that the truffles are giving off. And we know now that we need these guys in the soil in addition to the sexual compatible mating types. This is a thick speech here. You need all of these guys together, including the different sexual mating compatible types in the soil to achieve a fruiting body. So what we need is living soils. We can't do monoculture when it comes down to putting trees and orchards together. All right, let's relax for a minute. Let's talk about the egos in truffle world, right? So this is a few weeks ago at the North American Truffle Growers Association annual meeting. We meet on the East Coast and then we meet on the West Coast. So we swap every other year. This is down in Paso Robles. This is Marcos Macio. He's a really good collaborator in the truffle world. He's from Spain, and he and some of his business partners, they all went to graduate school together. They put together a fabulous company. And I'll talk about that in a minute. This is a grower from Idaho. This is a grower from Washington. These are growers from Oregon, from Turkey, from California. We have people from North Carolina and Virginia. People from all over the country get together to collaborate, share information on what we're doing, what's successful, what's not successful in growing truffles. Here we are at the NACA meeting. We have professors, we have farmers, we have scientists, we have like-minded individuals to really collaborate. So these I would consider some of the good egos in the truffle world. Mm-hmm. So there are other egos. There's much bigger egos to contend with in the truffle world. So we have like Urbani truffles, which, you know, sometimes at Christmas I reach out to them and I buy truffles from them. They are fabulous. It's a multi-billion dollar company. It's the largest truffle company on the globe. They're out of, you could guess it, Italy. And this is one of the guys from Urbani. They wear suits to work to sort truffles. It's very fancy. And then we have other caviar, gourmet companies, people who will sell truffles, people based out of New York with Italian names, people based out of France with New York names. It's kind of crazy. We have truffle growers like Charles Lefevre out of Oregon, New World Truffier. He is the leader of the Oregon Truffle Festival. He is one of the prime plant nurseries to get tree stock to grow truffles in the U.S. We have dog companies. My friend Alana up in Washington, she has Truffle Dog Company. So she has dogs in all the states. People that collaborate with her, go through training with her and their teams. They sell cool little, we have these, I just got one a couple weeks ago at the Paso event. It's a 3D printed truffle that opens up to put a truffle inside to bury for your dog to find. So when your dog digs it up, it looks like an actual truffle that you're digging up. So it kind of helps them with sight cue. Really cool. And then Semolina New World and Old World truffles. These are two fabulous millennials that fell in love. They're in their 20s. They're young. They wanted to get into the truffle world. So now they buy and sell truffles, and they only sell through Instagram. It's so fabulous. And I met them at the NACA meeting, and they were like, "You're Stephanie Jarvis?" And I'm like, "You're Semolina Truffles?" It was like running into celebrities. It was really really fun. And of course we have Connie Green at Wine Forest Wild Foods. She's in Napa Valley. I'm in Napa. She's been around for decades. She's a huge supporter of MSSF and SOMA, and she does a lot of cooking demonstrations, and she's been a wholesaler. So we have the retailers, we have wholesalers, we have the middlemen bringing truffles out of Europe into the US for all of us to enjoy on the culinary tables. Next slide. And then of course we have these egos, and I have one of my own in the cabin. Hopefully she's not barking her head off. Her name is Jasper. She's we're in training, but she's a trained truffle dog. She's a Lagotto Romagnolo. Has anybody heard of a Lagotto Romagnolo? They're fabulous. So if anybody here is familiar with the Muppets with Jim Henson, they look like little Muppets. They have great personalities, and they're actually evolutionarily, they don't really have very good eyesight. They have really shaggy manes across their eyes, and so their noses are just accentuated more than a normal dog, and they just love hunting truffles. When I take my dog out hunting truffles, I don't see her as joyous as chewing a bone, chasing a ball, doing dog things. When she's hunting truffles, she is like, this is it. She's so happy. So this is part of the Oregon Truffle Festival. This is the Joriad. It's a truffle hunting dog competition, which is fabulous. We've had German Shepherds win, Dachshunds win. You don't have to be a fancy Lagotto to win or to be trained to hunt truffles. So we have all shades and sizes of dogs enter and win, and it's fabulous. The Joriad. The Joriad. It's part of the Oregon Truffle Festival every year, and it's really fun. They do the first round in an arena, and then they do a second round out in the woods. And then they have like first, second, and third for both rounds, and then they do another round out in the woods for the winners of the winners to get the grand champion. And there's a truffle dinner, of course, afterwards. I don't think the dogs get any truffles to eat, but it's fabulous. And then, of course, there's these egos we got to contend with sometimes, which are the rattlesnakes. Sometimes they pop up in the woods. Sometimes they pop up in our orchards. Just have to be aware of those egos as well. And here's little Jasper. She's had a haircut since then. She's not as shaggy, but she's definitely on the payroll. So I am a West Coast girl, and I have degrees in plant physiology, organic chemistry, and mycology. And I am very aware of the impact we have here on planet Earth. And I'm seeing temperatures here in California that I never saw as a child. 90% of life on Earth lives underground in our soils. These systems that I'm talking about today are very complicated. And the deeper we look, the more we peel away the onion, the more we realize we don't know what we think we know, and we're learning more. And being part of truffle cultivation allows me to plant trees, which I am very, very passionate about. I am able to do my part in carbon sequestration. I am doing my part in regenerative agriculture, and I am able to educate myself and educate my clients on the importance of these aspects of being a human on this earth at this time. Education is the first step to take an active and understanding role in this complicated system, and education just never stops. So thank you for being here at Mendo Camp, because we're here to learn and learn from each other, right? We're all teachers and students to each other. So lowering evapotranspiration rates in orchards is a main target goal for me, and trapping moisture in soils, allowing more rare plants and rare insects to come back into these farming systems, and stocking carbon in the soils and farming mycorrhizal fungi along the way, and getting truffles is just a bonus. We definitely need to change our habits and what we think agriculture is and what it should be. And so creating living soils and putting back into our farms, into producing these living soils. And the earth took billions and billions of years to create these soils, and just within a few generations, we have just destroyed them. So me being able to grow truffles is allowing me to do my part. When I think about what I can do, I just kind of put a circle around me and my community and where my reach can be. And so it's become planting trees for me personally. So I have learned so much, and photosynthesis is the key, and that is my answer. So there you go. The complicated system we're talking about here is, where does it start? It's very confusing. So you have a rodent here, but where did that rodent get the truffle? Well, found it under the ground from these aromas, and then ate the truffle and then pooped out the truffle in this nice little package of fertilizer. But there really isn't any literature out there that proves that that package of fertilizer makes these spores any more viable than they already would have been if no one ever pulled it out of the ground and ate it. But the theory is, yes, that definitely helps. How could it absolutely not help? So the spores go back into the soil at a different location, moving mating types. They germinate, they create mycelium, and then you get more mating types and more locations under the soil. Around the soil, the water from the rain will help move those spores into the soil, and then you end up with mycelium, primordia, and then more truffles. So this is a generic system that we're trying to recreate in orchards. So here's some more egos. So not all squirrels eat truffles, but all squirrels eat truffles. I just heard a talk by Simon Cartwright up in Oregon. He has had a truffle orchard for about 15 years. Just in the last 2 years, his squirrels never bothered his orchard. Just in the last 2 years, they discovered the truffle. And they're in his orchard eating his truffles now. So these organisms, these animals, are also changing their behavior. Oh, there's a nice food source. Let's eat it. So here's more egos we have to contend with. They're cute though, aren't they? So what they will do, and we might find this out in our foray tomorrow, and it would be fabulous if we did, as we're going into winter, they will go out and find truffles. They will pull them out, and then they will cache them in a nice little refrigerator for themselves, and then come back to it later in the spring after they do their hibernation or torpor, and then they have a food source just waiting for them. Unfortunately, other organisms may find that, dig that up, and eat it, like we may tomorrow. And but this is one way that the squirrels, they don't just find them and eat them right away. They will find them and store them. And some actually may rot and then re-inoculate this tree. So that's kind of a fun part of the system. We also have to contend with other smaller organisms, and I could probably put another 10 layerings on top of this as we go smaller down the food chain. So the slugs. The slugs are definitely a problem. In Australia, they use, I don't even know what the tons of sluggo, but they are the reason why sluggo is still in business. So they have a lot of slugs. Slugs are a huge issue in Australia. And then we also have the Leodes beetle. Now, we don't have the Leodes beetle here in the United States yet, but we know all about moving bugs and other invasive species around the globe. When an orchard comes online for production, this guy always shows up. He's not native to Australia, and now he's an issue in Australia. He's not native to New Zealand, and they are very, very much more careful about what comes in and out of that country than most other countries. This beetle is now in New Zealand. And Spain, the Mediterranean Peninsula. Yeah, and there they use all kinds of contraptions, and each year they come up with something new to trap them and try to get the aromas. stronger or different, that's more attractant to them, or some other species of plants that are more interesting to them to keep them off the truffle. But they definitely will chew the truffle, lay eggs on the truffle, then the worms are in the truffle, and then so it goes from a grade A, because in truffle world there's a whole thing about grading the truffle. The perfect truffle, and then as soon as you get one nick, one hole from a bug, it goes to like an A minus, and then it goes from $1,600 a pound to like $1,000 a pound. So it really affects the economics, which we'll get to. Oh, let's talk about the pill bugs. I didn't know roly-polies were an answer until I was putting this presentation together. I just probably spent a good 40, 60 hours. It's just, this is a whole new talk for me. This is so much fun. So I was like, roly-polies? I love roly-polies. I have a worm farm, I have a compost bin, I go out and I say hi to my roly-polies, and if they get in my truffle orchard, it's war. Because they will eat the mycelium, they will eat the primordia, and they are an issue. And I'm like, but they're so cute. Like, how can they, like the squirrels, like, all right, well, you gotta go. But we're talking about living regenerative soils, but at the same time, it's like these guys, you don't want these guys if you want truffles that are A positive grade truffles. So there's gotta be a give and take there as well. Will this play?
Oh.
It should be on, it should just be is there a play button?
There it goes.
Well, okay, this is Marcos. I was in...
That beetle called Leodes exclusively feed from truffles. So we can see on the wild, and we will see it in the orchards as well. And we will talk tomorrow about beetle, and you will see the orchards. In fact, you will see traps that we put in the orchards to catch the beetles, because they make a big damage on the truffles. Okay, it doesn't affect the smell, but at the end it affects the quality. So even you have a golf ball, a lovely round truffle with holes, it will never be an extra truffle. Okay, so we need to control them. But at the same time, this beetle helps to propagate the spores and the males. So it's really related to highly productive orchards. So highly productive orchards has lots of beetles, and it always arrives when the production is going up, the beetle comes with the production.
And there you have it. I mean, it's a problem for, thank you, guys, that was awesome, teamwork. So it's definitely a problem everywhere, these beetles and then the slugs, and it's just, so it's farming, everywhere you go, somebody's trying to eat what you're trying to grow, because it's good, right? All right. So, more on how we're going to trap these guys. We have problems with the voles, these guys, you don't see, voles are big. So the voles will create tunnels around the root system, and then oxidizes the roots. It's too much oxygen, there's too much respiration in the soil, and that dries everything out, and then you don't get truffles. And then if there are truffles or primordia, the voles will eat them, and you don't see them because they're underground, except for the wee hours of the morning. So.
My question was, do you have slug problems?
Oh, yes, definitely, slug problems.
In your installation?
Yes, there's one in particular I can think of that we definitely have. We use Sluggo, it's dog friendly. Is it friendly to the other organisms in the soil? Sure, please. I'd love to learn all about Sluggo and slugs. All right. Oh, we use beer too, beer in little cat cans, yeah. Beer is good. So this is what the gophers do to your trees. They're looking for water, they're looking for food, and they will just come along and just chew the roots. You'll be in your orchard on Tuesday and everything looks fabulous. You'll come in on Wednesday and there's 3 trees that are like dead. You're like, you've got to be kidding me. And so they just chew the roots to the nub. Like, this is what you can do about it. You just got to plant a new tree and it's just done. So we try to do ethical trapping. I don't like poisons because we do have dogs on properties and most poisons will kill dogs or at least get them really sick, which is a big vet bill. So we use these guys, which are very effective. You actually put 2 or 3 in the hole. You have to find the runs and put them down in the runs. So if there's 3 runs, you need 3 traps. and then you open up a little hole so the sun comes through, and these guys come through to plug up that sunlit hole, and they just get snapped. And this last summer, I think we trapped like 80 gophers in one of the 2-acre orchards that I helped cultivate. So they're very prolific. They're having fun down there. Definitely. All right, so I learned this week. Thank you guys for having me do this presentation. There are so many things that like truffles. Even cordyceps wants to eat truffles. So Cordyceps capitata also will grow on a false truffle, Elaphomyces. So Cordyceps is a parasite mostly on insects, caterpillars, arthropods, but also on some fungi. And this particular false truffle, this is known in Northern Europe, Ireland, Northern England, Scotland area, but it's been found in the Olympic rainforest. Randomly, a friend of mine sent me a video of Paul Stamets extracting one of these out of the forest. And this, I want to say whose work this is. Excuse me, say flip the page. Pat O'Reilly. Pat O'Reilly is a East Coast mycologist. Is that correct? So these are his photographs, and this is his work, so he's been studying this. And it's another fabulous system. There's so many, okay?
Got a question here.
Yes.
Have you tried owls for controlling gophers?
Oh, yeah. We'll talk about that in a minute. I do want to point this out. Does everybody know what this is? No. This is called raking. This is the bane of my existence. So, as an ecologist and a mycologist, I spend a lot of time in the woods this time of the year. And when I walk out there and I see all the duff pulled away into one giant pile and left there, I just want to scream. So what this does, we can do it slightly, lightly, put the duff back, but when you dig hardcore, it disrupts the subsurface of the soil, it breaks up the mycelium, it disrupts that whole entire system, and it lays this area fallow for several years of production. It disrupts productive, so if you want to be able to come back to your patches next year, don't use a rake. Let's talk about these guys. So we have, these are native truffles, so we're hoping that we're going to find some native truffles tomorrow on our foray, yes? Yes, yes. Do we have some enthusiasm here? So this is Leucangium carthusianum. This is the Oregon black truffle. This is Tuber organens. This is the Oregon white truffle. And this is, excuse my French, excuse my Latin, Calipoia brunea. This is not a very, well, looks pretty prolific. Not a very common truffle, but when you do find it, you do find a lot of it. And these are all very edible. And I prefer the white truffles over the black truffles simply because I prefer the floral, garlicky aromas of a white truffle versus the musky, deep, rich aromas of black truffle. Oh, just hit the button again. It should just all come up. Yes. This is a huge list of truffles. These are the true truffles. Most of these are false truffles. You see rhizopogon here, so it's not all Tuberaceae. It's a mixed bag of tricks. This is a fabulous study that was done here in the Sierra Nevada very recently. They took 4 elevations, which basically is 4 tree types of forest. And so oaks all the way up into the pines, up into the firs, etc. And they did 3 10-foot transects. They raked, and of course they put the duff back. They were responsible about it, but they were doing it for research to find, and they were able to find over 65 species. Some were new to science. This is just one attempt at trying to find the diversity of what's happening here for the world of gastromycetes, hypogeous underground fungi. When I saw this and read this paper, I giggle with glee. It's so fascinating to me. truffles are a huge, important food source for all of these organisms that I'm saying are the egos out there. I mean, this is what they eat. So it's really important that they keep these habitats intact. All right. So I was asked to do some research and talk about reforesting lands and what happens with Christmas tree farms. What's going on there? So there really isn't any, let's just talk about Christmas tree farms as we're going into the holidays. There really isn't any research out there that's published that we know of. And I did call some people and ask the question. And we don't know if there's anybody using mycorrhizal fungi for Christmas tree farms specifically. And in these Christmas tree farms, these are fir trees mostly, conifers, and native truffles. We're talking about the Leucangium and the Oregon whites, Oregon blacks, etc. They use a lot of fertilizers in the Christmas tree farms, and a lot of fertilizers have a lot of nitrogen, phosphorus, that's going to lower the pH. It's going to change the pH. The truffles aren't really going to thrive there. And then they also harvest these trees fairly young. So there's something, a succession of species, richness in forests. As a tree germinates and grows, you're going to get certain species of truffle there. We're talking about firs in our native forest here. And then within about 20 years of life of these fir trees, that's when you start to see these native truffles show up. And what you see here, me and Aldo, another Lagoda who lives in Washington, this is up in Washington State. You see these perfect rows? This is a Christmas tree farm gone wild. So my friend Mike Davis, he bought this Christmas tree farm about 10 years ago, overgrown, not harvested anymore, obviously, and it is now just a natural truffle field. Every year it grows Leucangium, and he gets pounds and pounds. He just hammers the city of Seattle with black Oregon truffle up in Washington. And it's just natural. It just happened. They didn't inoculate. They don't re-inoculate. They don't need to. It's a fir. I don't know specific species of fir.
Wasn't Doug? Doug fir is often the truffle species.
Yes, I don't think these are Doug fir trees. I would have remembered that because I would have seen the cones everywhere. Yeah, I don't think these are Doug fir, but I can find out for you. Yeah, that's a valid question. I didn't write it down. I didn't think to ask. What we're seeing here is in Spain. So there's a huge program that the EU has started back in the 50s for replanting the entire landscape of Teruel, Aragon, the east coast, outside Barcelona and south of Spain. So in the 1600s, 1700s, the Spanish government, they needed ships, they needed armadas, they needed to fight wars, and they chopped down the forests just like it was a never-ending forest. And a century later, it was deforested. And so in the early 40s and 50s, the government said, hey, if you plant truffles, we'll give you land and we'll give you the money to buy the trees. So you drive through this area of Spain, and it is just thousands and thousands and thousands of acres. It's like Napa Valley with grapes, but it's Teruel with oak trees. But the caveat is you can never cut the tree down, you can never replant, and it's just going to be a perpetual truffle orchard from here on out. So that is one way that truffles definitely have been used to reforest landscapes, is in Spain specifically. And now because of that, they're one of the #1 producers of truffles in the world, especially for exports. Fabulous. There are, to just diverge away from truffles for a minute, there are other species of fungi that can be inoculated on roots of trees and grown in orchards. And this is very popular in Eastern Europe, in Spain and Italy and in France. Specifically with Suillus and Lactarius, where it is a choice edible species. So these grow on Scots pine. There's a few other species, specific species of pine, all pines, that these fungi like to grow on. And there are many nurseries over there that will grow truffle trees as well. It's a big business. And they grow these specific types of trees for you to purchase 1, purchase 500 and grow your own lactarius or Suillus growing trees. So it's not just truffles growing in orchards. We can also grow orchards with these other species of fungi. And I have yet to see this happening here in the US. This is a old world European thing that is very popular, actually. Yeah. Something even more exciting is reforesting South America. So this is a huge push for areas that have been deforested in Costa Rica and in Mexico and in Honduras. And you were in Honduras, weren't you, Brendan? Colombia, sorry. So this particular species of Lactarius indigo, and this is a research paper that came out last year, showing that this particular fungi, which is a choice edible, can be inoculated on multiple different species of native tree and then used to grow new forests. They're not showing a huge amount of success. This is kind of a new project going on. Once you plant a tree out in nature and you're letting nature take over, there's all kinds of organisms and other fungi in that ecosystem that are going to latch onto your roots, eat your other fungi. I mean, it's a dog-eat dog world down there. So this is another interesting piece of research I came up while putting this presentation for you guys tonight. So tomorrow, it is likely, probably unlikely, but we can hope, right, that we might find tuber organelles. I'm going to go down. What are we doing on time? Are we good on time? Okay, great. So we're going to go through a few truffle species that we may find tomorrow that are going to be growing here in the Pacific Northwest. We're at the very southern tail end, so we won't find the bucket loads that they do up in northern Oregon in the Eugene and the Corvallis area. They just get more rain up there. It's just, that's just how it is. But this has been found down in this area. So tuber organelles, it is a white truffle. It has a glabrous exoperidium. Exoperidium is the skin on the outside of your fruiting body, whereas the gleba, which is the interior, the meat, the potato meat inside of this truffle or this gastromycete. This is the hymenophore. This is where you're going to be growing and producing your spores. When we find truffles and we don't know what it is, this is with all fungi really. We take it under the microscope, we look at the spores. The spore shape, size, and ornamentation, and then in ascomycetes, the number of spores in the asci in its little sac that they develop in are very, very, very important for proper identification. But out in the field, we use our noses when it comes to truffles, and tomorrow we're going to use a dog to hopefully pinpoint some locations where we might be able to dig them up. So that's exciting. So Leucangium, this is the Oregon black truffle. Right away, you can see that the spore is remarkably different than the spore before. And then, of course, the gleba looks a lot like carbon, like a piece of coal in the soil. And sometimes when you dig up an area looking for them, you may miss them because they're very cryptic. They're dark and they match the color of the soil. And if you nick them, oftentimes you get this bright white. So sometimes that's how you find it, because you accidentally nick the truffle and then you're like, oh, what's that? And then, oh, there's a truffle. And so you get these carbon balls. If you collect a lot of them and then you put them in your hotel room, your hotel room's going to smell bad. That's why I don't like them, because I've just been, I've been inoculated. It's like, whoo, yeah. But people love these, so shave away on your food. Oregon black truffle. And then tuber californicum is another truffle that we find in the oak woodlands here in Northern California and southern Oregon. And again, you see this spore is remarkably different than the other species of fungi we just showed you. And if you put them in a jar with butter, cheese, eggs, the aroma, this is with all truffles, because of the thiols and the androstenals, they are giving off these aromas, and they will stick into the fats of these meats too. And they will then aromatize, and then you can crack that egg and make a scrambled eggs tomorrow with it, and it just smells amazing and tastes delicious. So you can infuse your eggs with truffle. Note to self. All right. So there are false truffles, and false truffles, we don't eat them. We don't know any toxicity on the false truffles, but they're kind of rare and not really well documented. So this might be something for the Mendo Mondo. It's, I don't know, it wouldn't be that brave, but rhizopogon, get rhizopogon often, and people think, I got a truffle in my orchard, and I'm like, no, it bounces. Yeah. Did anybody here know that joke? You just bounce it, like, see if it's a rhizopogon, you just throw it on the floor, it's like a rubber ball.
Yep.
So there's a few false truffles, and I hope we do find some tomorrow because they're very interesting. They're fun to find as well. All right, so here we're going to go talk about some European truffles. So currently there are 63 species of tubers. These are the true truffles. And these are gastromycetes classified under the genus of tuber. And who knows, tomorrow there might be a 64th, and next year there might be 10 more. So this number of all species of fungi, we do all this research, the number grows. And in Italy, there's about 25 species. Here in the Pacific Northwest, we have a handful. There's really only 6 species of all the tubers that we really want to eat. And a few of them grow here. Most of them grow over in Europe. This is tuber magnatum. This is the very expensive white truffle. This is tuber borkii, which we are collaborating on and growing very efficiently here in California, Oregon, and Washington. And I highly recommend, if you're going to grow truffles, start with tuber borkii. I can tell you why in a minute. This is tuber melanosporum. You can pick this out of a lineup very easily because of all of the holes in it, because the Laodes beetle loves tuber melanosporum. This is tuber aestivum, a much whiter gleba, and it has a lighter aroma, and it grows in the summer. So we call it the summer truffle. And if you live in Canada, you would plant tuber aestivum because it's too snowy in the winter to harvest. So this is something you can harvest in the summer. And then, let's see, number 5 is tuber brumale, which is very close cousin of tuber melanosporum. It just doesn't have as much aroma. It's harder to find. You don't really cultivate it because it doesn't fetch a high price. And I've had it. I actually prefer it over melanosporum because it's not as musky. It's delicious. And then this is tuber macrosporum, which is something you would only get wild in Europe, like tuber organens here. Macrosporum is something you would get over in Europe, and you may find it at a very high-end chef place. I have a hand over here. Yeah.
One question. I've spent a lot of time in France. Which would be the Paraguay black truffle and the Burgundy truffle?
This is the Paraguay black truffle here, tuber melanosporum, and then the Burgundy truffle, which is our summer truffle.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. What's also not shown here is tuber indicum, which is the Chinese truffle, and they grow a lot of tuber indicum in China, and they sell it to the Italians, and the Italians put it in their mix to dilute the other truffles and then sell it at the same price. We're going to talk about economics here in a minute. So this is me in Spain, and in just a couple of hours of being out in the wild woodlands, we collected tuber aestivum, tuber uncinnatum, tuber brumale, and tuber melanosporum. We collected 4 species of truffle, and there was also wild thyme, wild marjoram, wild rosemary, and I was like, wow, this is like the ancestral culinary right here in these oak woodlands. I was just like, it was very inspiring. Go to Europe, it's awesome. So, tuber aestivum, you can see the spores. They look like little soccer balls. We can just kind of fly through these. I guess we kind of just already hammered them, didn't we? One of the takeaways from this message is I do a lot of microscopy, which is why I have to wear glasses now. And what I learned studying the puffballs is that all these different fungi have fingerprints on their mycelium. Their mycelium at the macroscopic scanning electron microscopic level, they are all completely different individuals. It is fascinating. So tuberostivum, if you were to stick it under the microscope with the roots, you see it's got this crazy hairdo. So if you know you're collecting tuberostivum versus some roots out here, you might see that from something out here, I don't know. But if you're testing someone's soils from an orchard, you know you planted tuberostivum, and then you see that under the microscope, you're like, oh, I think we're in a good position here. And then you look even deeper and you see these just wild hairs. And of course we do DNA analysis to double check, but they just all do different, they have different fingerprints on the roots of the trees. It's fabulous. Oh, we're getting into economics. Fabulous. Good job, Jarvis. So tuberostivum roughly goes for $50 an ounce, which is about $800 a pound. So it's like an affordable sort of truffle if you just want to put it on a pizza and share with friends. Tuberborkii, this is my favorite truffle because it's like garlic and jasmine. It's like you put it on just a regular just cheese and tomato basil pizza and you just shave borky all over it. It's dynamite. And the mycelium on borky is just it's like icicles. It's like cystidia. Does anybody know what cystidia is? It's like these cells just sticking straight off the tips of the roots, and it's like these little fine hairs. So you may look at it under a microscope and you go, are those root hairs? And you look deeper and you're like, oh no, it's tuberborkii. And typically we're pulling borkii out of orchards we know it's supposed to be growing orchards. So this is a check to make sure that we have mycorrhizae on the roots. And go ahead and hit the button. So it's a little less. It's about $600 a pound, which is even more affordable, which is why I'm telling people here in California, if you're going to grow truffles, let's not go for the big bucks. It's going to cost you 17 years of your life and very frustrating, you know? Let's go for borkii where we'll get some bang for your buck and you get a return on your investment, and it's absolutely delicious. Tubermelanosporum, the roots again, remarkably different. The mycelium coming off the roots have 90-degree angles. It's the only mycelium I've ever seen that does these very specific 90-degree angles. It's not a dichotomous branch, it's not a 45-degree angle, it's a 90-degree angle. That might not look like a 90-degree angle because we're looking under a microscope and everything is in all directions, so it's not like super flat. But I tell you, that's a 90-degree angle if I was to like fine-tune it throughout the microscope. And also, when you look at the sheathing, the planktonema on the root, they each also have their own signature way that they web this mycelium netting over the root as well. So I smash the roots and look for puzzles or angles or different ways that the cell structure is designed over the sheathing of the root as well, and that also helps me to positively identify. And sometimes the landowner doesn't always want to do DNA analysis because it's time consuming and expensive, so I can kind of give them like a, hey, yeah, look at that price tag. It's a little more expensive. This is why everybody's putting in tubermelanosporum orchards, because they think they're going to get more bang for their buck. But this particular species of fungi, it likes the sun, but in California we have too much sun, so everybody's planting it in these like 20 by 20 feet spacing where they just get solar radiation, and they're not living soils, there's no canopy, and they're just like radiating this. I'm like, I come out, I'm like, this is dust. Like, how am I supposed to work with this? So we try to work with it, but this is the dollar sign everybody's looking for to get a return on their investment. So here we are. Tuber magnatum is the most expensive vegetable in the world. And in Italy, northern Italy where it grows, they are cultivating it in orchards, not super successfully. The Italians will say, oh, it's so successful. But that's yet to be actually seen. And with global climate change and the heating up of higher elevations, it's getting harder and harder to get these truffles out of the ground. And so the price is going up because they're the number one coveted truffle. And so some of these truffles in this case right here, this is a picture from Charles Lefebvre. they're like a pound a piece. So each one of these truffles is like $2,600. I mean, there's a lot of money in that case. Yeah, and once you pull these truffles out of the ground, that clock is ticking. You got to sell those suckers within days to get your return on your hard work out in the field. And in Italy, if you have a truffle dog that finds this, you better have a GPS tracker on your dog that's in the skin, because those dogs get stolen. It is sad news. It's big business. This is the economics in the real world of the truffle industry. There's mafiosa involved in this. It's crazy. Yeah. So we went from like what, $40 and $60 an ounce to $2,600 a pound. So when I was out to dinner with some girlfriends last week, what did I choose? I chose the $2,600 pound. I want 1 gram, please. Here's a $100 bill. Thank you very much. Yeah. So
Can you buy it by the gram?
you can in restaurants. They sell it by the gram in restaurants. And when they shave it on your meal, you're like, was that a gram? I think you need to give me some more. So in terms of cultivation, the economics, it depends on what your land already has and what equipment you already have. So I say $10,000 to $35,000 an acre. Well, do you have a well, or do you have to install a well? What is your water situation? That's going to gravely change that dollar sign. Do you have to build a fence, or do you already have a fence? Do you have to buy a tractor, or are you a vineyard owner? Are you a winery owner? Do you only want to put in 10 trees in your backyard? Let's do it. Let's cover it with lavender and rose bushes. Let's make it beautiful. I have a client in Sacramento, and she's got, I don't know, maybe 35, 40 trees, and she's got all kinds of herbs and roses and lavender, all species of lavender. She put pumpkins and squash through it this summer. It's just fabulous, and it's still going to produce truffles. So you don't have to do it in rows and rows like we do the vineyards or like, big ag. You can do it in your backyard and make it really cool. Like, this is a truffle orchard? Yes, it's pretty awesome. So the biggest producers and if you, like per acre, if you're doing melanosporum and you are productive, like Kendall Jackson is productive, and there are reasons why Kendall Jackson is very productive. I'm sure you've seen it in the San Francisco Chronicle, etc. But you can expect about $40,000 a year in return on your investment, ish. It's being done, and that is the good news. And so the most expensive truffle in the world so far was an almost 3-pound truffle. It went to auction. And this gentleman here, I forget his name, but he has bought many of these truffles over the course of the years. People get this like badge of honor that they were the one that bought the most expensive truffle. So this truffle went for $330,000 at auction, I hope it was delicious. I'm sure it was. So the biggest producers of truffles, and this was actually hard information to find because truffles are lumped in with fungi. So trying to find these actual figures, which is why I don't have figures, is so, like China, of course, is the biggest producer of mushrooms because mushrooms have been part of the culture for eons. And so, yeah, they're going to be the biggest producer of mushrooms in general, and that includes truffles. But in terms of just truffles, you have Italy, Spain, and France, which, of course, you can expect. And then we have the United States. Turkey is coming online now. And then you have us as the U.S. way down here at the bottom. We're working on it. We're still pioneering. So, something to know about truffle products, and we're going to wrap it up here pretty soon. I know some of you are tired and wanting to go to bed. Be wary of what you're buying at the store. Most oils are synthetic, and 90% of the truffle in your truffle products. Can you all see what this is here? Looks like olives. If you take a truffle product home and you look at it under the microscope and you don't see spores, there's a problem. Because a gleba ground up is what? Nothing but spores. Well, mostly spores. So here, they sort through the truffles. You see there's just pounds and pounds and pounds of truffles. And I went into one of these factories, and we went into one of these secret rooms where they didn't want you to, they had the head thing and the foot thing and the coat thing and no camera thing. And I look into this big vat and I go, that's not all tuber melanosporum. And I was the only mycologist in the room. Not that I'm like a big mycologist or anything, but I didn't know the difference between what I was looking at. And I was like, that's not all tuber melanosporum. The guy comes over and he closes the lid. Don't look in there.
What was it?
Well, it was just a mash of all different species of truffles. Yeah, so I could see that it was blonde gleba, black gleba, it was probably indicum, who knows? But if they're going to put tuber melanosporum, it's like wine, right? If you buy a bottle of Cabernet, you don't expect 100% Merlot, maybe 20%, but still, right? So there's no policing in the truffle industry at all because it's big money.
Are those olives in that picture?
You see it better now? Yes, olives. So for 80% olive and 20% tuber melanosporum, you're getting a tapenade that is then ground up and you can't tell the difference. And then it's put into a jar and sold to you for $60. You're eating olives. But hey, you know what? If you're going to a friend's party and you're bringing a cool truffle tapenade with cheese and crackers and a bottle of wine, go for it. Like, it's still got truffle in it, it's still fun. So I'm not knocking it, I'm just letting you know that it's not all what you think it's cracked up to be.
It shows olives in the first place was there as an umami of a vegetable that you can make.
There you go. Fabulous. So where do I fit into all of this egos and economics and ecology? Well, I don't do it for the ego or the economics. I definitely do it for the ecology and the mycology. So my day-to-day job is I do marketing for a wine distributor, and this gets me outside. It gets me out into the woods. It gets me talking to people. It gets me to do carbon sequestration and talk to people about regenerative farming. It gets me to be passionate about something. And I get to work with biodynamic farming practices, and I get to practice with electroculture farming practices. I make copper wires and copper pyramids and all kinds of crazy stuff. And the guys who help me clean up the orchard, they always think that there's like wire garbage in the orchard. I'm like, so I have to put up signs to let them know that these copper wires and these antennas that I'm building for electroculture are supposed to be there. It's experiments. and I'm really, like, I had an epiphany recently is we need to plant food forests for the future. So why just plant truffles? Why not plant apples and peaches and pears and truffles and oats and collect those oak nuts and turn that into coffee and collect the hazelnuts and turn that into hazelnut oil? So it's more than just truffles. It's more than just soils. It's food forests for the future. And that's all I got for you guys tonight.
So this is choice. This is what I've always wanted to find myself. And it's delicious.
Let me take a picture.
Yeah, you gotta take a picture.